So, is everyone excited to go back to school?
No.
Sort of?
I'm going to middle school. I'm excited to get my new backpack.
You're excited to get your new backpack?
I'm going to middle school, so it's a bit nervous.
Yeah, middle school is a big change. Are you excited, Freya?
That's her first year.
You're starting kindergarten, aren't you?
No, she's going.
Well, going into kindergarten, yes. Sorry, didn't say that quite right. Anyway, I have a story. I've told the story before, but I don't know if any of you have been here when I've done it, but I wanted to tell it again. And this story, it's actually a book, and the cover of the book is up there, but I like telling this one using all the things out of the box rather than just reading the story, so it's going to be a little bit different. And because it's a story book, it could happen at any time. So I don't have our usual cloth. I just brought a nice kind of green cloth that could be anywhere.
In the forest?
Could be the forest.
So,
And this story is a Jewish story. So that means instead of being about people going to a church, it's people that go to a synagogue. Have you heard the word synagogue before? So this is a synagogue, and instead of minister like me, it's a rabbi. Have you heard that word before? No? Good, new things today. So this is the rabbi. And in the synagogue, they have at the front what's called an ark. And the ark has in it, I need my little wedge here. What they keep in the ark is sort of their equivalent of our Bible. It's called the Torah. And actually the Torah is part of our Bible. And it's always kept in there because it's considered holy. And so this story is, that's what you need to know to start. And so as it begins, we meet this guy named Jacob. And Jacob, well, first of all, I need to say that this story begins by saying that this is the kind of place where miracles could happen. But for Jacob, miracles were the furthest thing from his mind. Jacob was very rich, and he was too busy thinking about how to make more money to look for a miracle. And so when he came into the synagogue, the rabbi would hardly begin to speak, to read from the Torah, when Jacob would fall asleep. Completely asleep. And when the service was over, he would get up and he would go home. And he would go to a nice big home. Now, another person was a man named David. David was very poor, and he was too busy thinking about how to feed his family to look for a miracle. And he was the caretaker at the synagogue. And so when the prayers were done and the rabbi left, he would go in and he would sweep up and clean things and make sure everything was ready for the next time. And then he would go back to his home and to his children. And it was a house that was empty of everything except hungry children. And that's how it went day after day after day. And it might be how it might have gone on forever, except that Jacob, the one time when he was at the synagogue, did something he'd never done before. He woke up. He woke up right at the moment when the rabbi was reading part of the Torah. And why did he wake up then? We don't know. But he did, and he woke up long enough to hear one one sentence being said, and it was this: "You shall bake 12 loaves of bread and set them before me in 2 rows, 6 in each row." That was it. Then he yawned and fell back asleep. When the service was over, Jacob rubbed his eyes and swallowed hard. The sound of the words, "You shall bake bread," were still really clear in his ears, and he's sure that it must have been God that had spoken to him. "But why to me of all people?" he said. "And why 12 loaves of bread?" On the other hand, he said, "Who am I to question God?" So Jacob hurried home, and he baked 12 loaves of bread. And when he got it done, he thought, now he had a problem. How was he going to get the bread to God? He decided that the synagogue was the holiest place, so he went there, and then he looked around and he thought, well, where can I leave it? I can't leave it at the door, because it'll be in the way. Well, and I can't put it in a corner, because it might get stepped on. And then he looked and he thought, I know, I'll put it in the ark. And so he opened the doors, and he put the bread in, and closed the doors. And he had put it in just the way he was supposed to. And then, feeling a little foolish, he walked home. So, no sooner had Jacob left than David came in to clean the synagogue. And he swept and dusted and tidied. And he stopped in front of the ark and he said, "Oh God, we are out of food. Oh God of compassion, I'm afraid that if you do not see fit to help us soon, we'll starve." And he opened the doors of the ark, and there were 12 loaves of bread. And he said, "Oh God, I didn't know you worked like that. Blessed are you, O God, who answers the prayers of those who call upon you in need." Overjoyed, he grabbed the 12 loaves and took them home.
How did that happen?
So, no sooner, and so he took them home and showed it to his wife and children, this bread that had come from heaven. No sooner had David left than Jacob went back to the synagogue, and he was curious to see if God had eaten the bread. And so he slowly went up to the ark and he opened the doors and said, "Oh my God, God, you really ate the bread. It's a miracle. I thought you were only kidding. Please forgive me. I wasn't sure it was really you, so I scrimped on the eggs. This is wonderful. Next week I will be back here with 12 new loaves, and this time I'll spare no expense." And he closed the doors and ran home, thrilled that God had accepted his gift. So the next week, just as he promised, he baked 12 more loaves, but this time with raisins.
That looks so good.
I know, it does look good, doesn't it? And he took them and he put them in the ark and said, "Oh, praise you, O God, who accepts the gifts of those who offer them in love." And then he went home. And of course, no sooner had Jacob left than David came in and said, "Oh God, we have eaten all the bread you gave us, and some we have given to those even less fortunate, but now there's nothing left to gain. I know I shouldn't ask, and I hope you won't think me greedy, but do you think in your infinite compassion," and he slowly opened the doors, "you could somehow see fit to bestow on your servant." He opened the doors and there were 12 loaves of bread, and this time with raisins. And he took them home. And so it went. Week after week, Jacob baked bread, David took the bread home. The weeks grew into months, the months into years. Jacob giving, David receiving, both of them thinking God was eating bread and baking bread. And then one day, the rabbi happened to be in the synagogue and saw the whole amazing thing. He saw Jacob come in and leave the bread. He saw David come in and take the bread. And so he called both of them to come in together. And he said to them, "The Holy Ark is not some kind of heavenly bakery." And Jacob said, "I should have known. God doesn't eat bread." He was sad. There wasn't any miracle after all. And David said, "I should have known God doesn't bake bread either. That there wasn't any miracle after all." And the rabbi said, "You are correct. God does not eat bread and God does not bake bread. God's miracles are not like that." Then the rabbi took their hands in his and he said, "Now that you know, you will have to do something even harder. Jacob, you have to go on baking bread. And David, you have to go on accepting the bread. Now you understand that your hands are God's hands, and your heart is God's heart." Now, Jacob and David often come to the synagogue together. They sit side by side, and you know what? Jacob doesn't fall asleep. And after their prayers, they come out into the warm sunshine, they stand together. Two people who understand that their hands are God's hands, and their hearts are God's hearts. Isn't that a great story?
Yep.
I wonder what part you liked best. What part did you like best, Mark?
My favorite part was when he was baking the bread, and then he thought that God was eating it, and then he thought God baked it for him.
Yeah.
And
I liked the love at the end.
You liked the love at the end? Yeah, it's pretty cool. You liked where he kept giving me bread. Yeah. Now, please don't eat this, because this is 3 years old, and it's glued on.
Oh my gosh, that's hard.
So it looks way better than it is. Anyway, we're going to sing a song that I think David and Jacob would have sung this song together, Never Ending Joy. Let's sing that together. And then